Hi, this is a video that I've been thinking about for a while and working on for a little while. About a month ago, I was working on the abruptly interrupted Sarah Boone show with Laugh Track, and I was going over what was going to be episode 2 of season 2, mainly focused on body cam. And something just struck me in one of the body cams. We'll go over that, of course. And it's nothing new. It's something we've seen a million times with Sarah. That I just couldn't put a laugh track to suddenly. I just, partly because you know how it is when you watch something over and over again, it kind of hits different. And because Sarah is so incredibly stupid and ridiculous, it's very rare. I mean, unless the footage involves George Torres himself, I there's nothing to me that's not funny there. But this particular moment, I just got kind of nauseous because she's so disgusting, and I thought I kind of lost my feeling for putting a laugh track to it in that moment. I had to step away, and I thought actually that this would be done a lot sooner, but then things happen. And I didn't want to just like rush it out there. So I've been thinking about it. I'm glad I did because Family Court, of course, added a little more to this whole thing. And the 911 calls and the body cam, they show Sarah in her raw, most disgusting, true self. And what struck me in this particular one, as we'll see in a minute, is the fact that, and I've seen her do this more than once, and we will see that too, she is very quick to tell officers that he has no weapons and they don't have to be scared. Very quick to tell them that, and tells them that more than once, of course, because we know Sarah repeats herself all the time. You guys don't have anything to worry about. He has no weapons. And this made me so sick because, not that I know, of course, I've seen this a million times that she does this and it's ridiculous. Of course, we know she's a liar. But when you see it in rapid succession like that, and on top of everything else, it's just so. And also the officer's reaction, they know what they're dealing with there. And then that compiled on for me just the tragedy of the fact that this was dealt with in such a way that, and I understand in some ways, I mean, we've seen things dealt with worse, but this was just such a horrible, tragic string of events, and the way it was dealt with. And so the first one we're going to see is the first time that Sarah called 911 when she was wearing that t-shirt that she just bought yesterday. And she got arrested. She's talking to the officers, and of course she's called 911. Obviously, that's how this whole thing happened. And George was in the townhome, and this is them about to go in, talk to him.
Pardon me for saying that, but like, oh man, he let loose on my ass tonight, and I'm not having it.
Okay. All right.
I got kicked in the face.
Okay.
Kicked in the face.
That you know of, there's no guns,
No,
anything in there?
ma'am,
Okay.
no.
We just have to double check that. There's none of us
I know, baby. You guys are doing your job.
All right,
No,
Sarah here?
Yes.
Sarah here?
Go get him. I swear to God, there's nothing for you guys to be afraid of.
Okay.
What's his name?
George.
George? All right.
There's nothing for you guys to be afraid of. I swear to God, I'm done with his ass, dude. He beat the fuck out of me tonight. And I'm done with it. I have to go to work tomorrow.
Now, First, just the fact that Sarah Boone got arrested in this incident. This was her first time calling 911 on George Torres. And it also explains why George Torres, it only took him one time to learn not to talk. He never spoke again to the authorities. And that's because what Sarah Boone learned is to lie and to say whatever you have to say. Because it didn't even occur to her that they would question him or notice anything on him. I mean, she's a white woman calling about a Hispanic male. That's a no-brainer. And if that is too far of a stretch for some people, it's a woman calling about a man abusing her. So, um, instead of, I mean, this is so ridiculous because of what we know about her, but instead of reflecting on it and thinking, you know, we're going to be tussling like this and he's going to be pulling me off of him and I'm going to be scratching him or I'm going to be attacking him. Really, I can't be calling this has to stop one way or another or both ways. Like either we can't do this or I can't call 911 or how about both? Just, let's reassess things here. This is not healthy. No, of course not. But for whatever happened in between this 911 call and every single one following, and there were plenty of them, it was very clear to George that he was not to say anything, and it was very clear to Sarah that she'd be just fine, that he wouldn't say anything. And we also know that on the contrary of just not, I mean, obviously this didn't stop, but not only did she feel confident that he wouldn't say anything, she would continuously say, I'm not getting arrested, right? Because she put that out there and she set the scene. She let them know that, and they would keep saying to her, no, why would you be getting arrested? And they didn't exactly say it like that. They were more like, why should you be arrested? I mean, these cops had no patience for her and her bullshit, but and a lot of times she threw in, well, because I fought back. I got arrested once because I fought back, and I fought back this time. And you might find, there's one body cam where the one where she's sitting on the stoop with these two other broads, and she's like, you might find bruises on him, but it's not me. Her usual, just nonsense. And now the other instance where she does this that I have noticed may have happened in other ones, but these are the two that I specifically noticed recently, is when she gets the 911 Uber back to her townhome from Brian's house. And a lot of things started to bother me about this. Not that they didn't bother me before, but if you look at something disgusting, you're disgusted. If you look at it really closely, you're really disgusted. And this is no exception. So when she calls for the cop Uber back to her townhome from Brian's, when they go there with her, of course, she has forgotten her keys, she decides. The whole thing makes no sense. She later says that there's a key hidden somewhere. No sense. She thinks nothing of calling. Now, let's not forget, this entire fight started because, first of all, and Sarah says this, but she doesn't know that we know that this was the real problem there, which is he's always talking about his kids. And I am of the theory that Sarah got jealous if George danced with the dogs. That's the level that I think she is on. So, she has to be the only one. Nobody else knows, but I know. I know George better than he knows himself. So he's always talking about his kids, and he said she was not a mother, or supposedly, whatever she said. She has now left. From what the body cam said, I don't remember exactly. I think it was like 10:30 at night at this point. I don't know. 9-year-old little boy here So, he's probably around his bedtime, maybe a little after. I don't know, and doesn't really matter. The point is, he's a small child, and she's already disrupted their whole evening. She just left. Now she's calling over there to ask Brian to bring her the keys, both keys, because there's no way for her to get in otherwise. In the back front, in the front door, and the back door. And these officers have started out with no patience for her. She does not think, certainly does not ask, what he's going to do about their son. Now, I don't have a child, but I can guarantee you that the first thing on my mind, if I had to call my former husband and ask him to do anything for me that involved leaving the home anytime after that child's potential bedtime, or at all, my first concern would be the child. That house was not so far away. She could have gone back over there herself. If she had said to them, he can't leave his child alone, they would say, we'll go pick up the keys for you. No, why should she do that? So she doesn't ask. I don't know what he did. I assume he either brought him with him or had to leave him at home. It was just a few minutes. I get it. But the point is that Sarah did not give a shit. After all of this with I'm not a mother and he's always talking about his kids, and she does not even remember she has a son in that moment. She is so enthralled with this moment of just torturing George and, quite frankly, the officers and Brian. So that really struck me, because I don't know anyone who is a parent who would not ask after that. Like, what are you going to do with name redacted? Or is it okay? Do you want me to come by so you don't have to wake up, name redacted, or leave him alone, or bring him, whatever it is. Just that to me shows such negligence, and of course her true colors, which we know. Also, this shows Sarah's complete lack of not only fear of George Torres, but lack of respect for authority, and lack of just the understanding that these people are doing a job, and a dangerous job. For them, this is not just cosplaying like she is as a victim. This could be a potentially danger every single time a police officer. And listen, I'm not always a cheerleader for cops, but there are plenty of good ones, thank God. And these guys were maybe not perfect, but they were doing their job, and they did a pretty good job, all things considered. They're in constant danger. You just never know. And scenarios that we don't think of, we can't put ourselves in that mindset, but we know enough to have the presence of mind to understand that other people are there. This is their job. This is dangerous. The fact that they're even concerned that he would have a weapon is enough. They're cops, for crying out loud. You guys don't have to do that. She's in the mix, telling them what to do, and just so disgusting. We see her telling them they don't have anything to worry about, telling them to put him under the jail, put the fear of the police into him, tell him to eat a dick. I mean, and of course, can I get a hug?
Hey, if he's in the house, he's not coming to the door, but you have my spare key. I can't get in. If you could, there's no other way of me getting in my house. Unfortunately, can you please bring me the spare key? Yes, please. Out front. The front door and back door. I have no way of getting in. Thanks, bye.
2021
Thank you so much.
Hanging out here.
I am not going in there.
Okay.
There's no weapons.
George?
There's no weapons.
Ask for minimum. Ask for minimum.
That's Lucas's.
Reference building, sir.
I know, but
County 120.
It's not possible.
124, Charlie.
I'm just telling them.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
Can we get minimum traffic for a building search?
Ready to make an announcement?
Yep.
You guys don't have to shoot that.
Man, we have to wait, do you think? Just let us do the right thing, okay?
Yeah, hold it.
Ready to make an announcement?
Sheriff's office, you in there, come on out.
Full ladder.
And then, of course, I started thinking about all other things just from this perspective, things that we've talked about and thought about before. But I started thinking about just the cruelty of Sarah and the fact that she has no kindness in her. She has no consideration for anyone, certainly not her child, not even her child. You know, I was going to do a whole video on this, but it really doesn't warrant a whole video. And the thing that I often think about when it comes to Sarah Boone and some other criminals, but certainly Sarah Boone, because she's the one we're always thinking about, is that when we talk about I say this a lot, that even horrible people, even criminals, love their children, and they love them in such a way that it's like a real love. And I always think about Israel Keys. Israel Keys, if you don't know, was a serial you-know-whatter, and a very clever one. He'd been very odd, actually, kind of very random, well-planned, all of them completely different, no real modus operandi there. But when he was finally caught, all of his crimes were, of course, heinous. His main concern was his child, his daughter. That was the only thing he cared about. He told them everything they wanted to know. I mean, he wasn't the most likable guy in the world, obviously, but you know what he did? To his last moment, and he ended up unaliving himself in the cell, I think a night or two after they caught him. His main concern, he told them, I will tell you everything. I just don't want anything going public because I don't want my daughter to have to live with this for the rest of her life. And it's interesting because that's somebody who clearly has and admitted to having a complete lack of concern for human beings, the life of other humans. When it came to his little girl, to his daughter, to his child, that's what he cared about, and he really cared about it. And he was willing to put his entire life forth and deal with some very unpleasant consequences for his child. Now, that might be an extreme because a lot of criminals and just assholes aren't that far into the, exemplary parent. But I always laugh because I think, he's really, as far as criminals go, he's like dad of the year, best dad ever, world's best dad. And it's not just her 911 calls and her body cams and her allocution. The letters that she wrote to the court, for example, about her attorneys. She insults them, insults their families, doxes them, including airing out any past infractions they may have. They did nothing to her, except they wouldn't jump on board with all of her bullshit lies, and we saw where that got her anyway. Let's be honest, Frank J. Bankowitz is a dud of an attorney. He is unprofessional, hides, lies, and is disrespectful. I had a feeling when other attorneys spoke about him and winced, sighed, or rolled their eyes, saying they've had some of his clients, and after finding his 3 underlined public reprimands I announced to the court, and which he said pissed him off, being the reason for his first attempt to withdraw. That was just a perfect example of how cruel and horrible she is. And you can never That is the one thing, as lazy as Sarah Boone is, and she is lazy and stupid, but she has endless energy to right any perceived wrong, to follow through with any vengeful feelings she may have. Brian Boone supported her, did everything for her, showed up the day of, showed up this time to give her her spare keys, and we've seen how she thanks him. It also occurs to me that one of the other things that Sarah Boone has that a lot of victims of abuse do not have is she had support. Brian Boone, as I just said, supported her, not just monetarily, not just financially, but in every way. I mean, she called, he came. He did not live very far away. He and her child were right there in her marital home, 0.07 miles away, just a few minutes. She had Melissa, the property manager, on site there who really went above and beyond and broke some rules to support Sarah. It's not like Sarah was so isolated like George was in a lot of ways. Well, certainly in more ways, if not in every way. I'm sure his family would welcomed him back, but she was there to take him to, I mean, there's no, he certainly wouldn't have done, and I've said this many times, but one of the main reasons that we know that, I mean, of course we know, I don't even have to make that argument anymore. If George Torres, forget abusive, was even the jealous type, Sarah went to her former husband's house, George Torres would have showed up 5 minutes later with the bat. That's not how abusive, jealous spouses or boyfriends, girlfriends, that's not how that goes. Just like Sarah constantly harassed him and his family, he would have actually shown up there. I mean, that's just how violent men are. And when I first started thinking about this, all of this, I heard on the news, I don't remember the details, but it was a woman whose fiance and she were gunned down in her home before the gunman turned the weapon on himself. He was her ex-fiance, her ex-boyfriend. This was her and her fiance that were killed by him. And she had made many complaints that were ignored. And this is what brings us to what happened to George Torres, because we know that abuse can happen to men and women. However, it happens to women a lot more. And in general, women are not taken as seriously by law enforcement. They're just not. I've experienced myself. I know a lot of people have. It is just a sad truth. And because this went on for so many years where women were in a domestic situation of violence, and they were not taken seriously, and they were in turn murdered, they had to overcorrect. And when you overcorrect, mistakes on the other side happen, and that's exactly what happened with George Torres. Now, listen, I cannot overstate how much more common it is for men to abuse women. And one of the facts, and this is a fact that I find very sobering, is that the lead cause of death in pregnant women in the United States is murder. That's the number one cause of death in pregnant women. So we cannot minimize the severity of this situation. The fact that this was such an obvious, these cops, and I'm going to show you something in a minute that shows another situation where the cops walk into Sarah's townhome and they're like, oh, we've been here before. These guys, they were there a lot, and they saw the same thing every time. And as a matter of fact, in this clip I'm about to show you, they have to wake George up. And this is actually I cut it off as soon as George starts engaging with them, but This was a situation that didn't have to go this way. More could have been done, and more should have been done. They were there anyway, and it was very clear that these cops didn't believe Sarah Boone, and they certainly did not like her. All they had to do was at least charge her with abusing the emergency services, a false 911 call, something, just put an end to this. But they didn't, as we know. What Sarah did during the family court trial, the things that she said, the accusations that she made, for her to, while under oath, although she might be convinced by her own bullshit, I don't know. For her to, and even if this were true, it's horrible, but for her to say under oath in court in front of the judge that the reason that she was unable to fulfill her parental obligations is because she was trying to keep her child safe, and claiming that Brian knows that. Brian, of course, handled it very well. He was like, I don't think so, bitch. Yeah, there was abuse there, but not like how you said. For her to do that, even if it were true, let's just walk down that road for a moment. Even if it were true, Sarah would, let's say this is someone else and this is true, and this was a situation she had gotten herself into, and a woman who is being abused in this situation, who has a child that they care about, would blame herself still, because she would know, or she would think, that she should not have gotten herself into that position. That is one of the main feelings that somebody who is being abused, and I'm sure George had this too, feels, is guilt. They blame themselves, not necessarily for what's going on to them, although that too, but for what it's doing to their families. And this, even if this were true, even if the way she said it is how it was, it's still your fault, because you invited a man into your home, a person into your home, who was so abusive and terrifying and scary that you couldn't have your own child over. But she is using this to completely lift herself of any responsibility, of any guilt. She was stuck in this situation. Just like she sat at the trial testifying that she was always scared and terrified and afraid, and then went about telling the jury and God and the whole world and us how she went through and navigated George's day for him. Inside, outside, puzzle, book, just terrified and always afraid. That's because I lived. When they walk into this townhome, they remember it. They realize they were there. And of course, Sarah was like, yeah, I knew you looked familiar. And they said, yeah, you had gotten into a fight at the bar. No, there are a lot of body cams we haven't seen, And they walk over to George, who is obviously sleeping. And one of the officers calls him Jose when waking him. And he says, George. And he says, oh, sorry, George. And then you hear Sarah say, you didn't think I would call, did you?
You look familiar.
Because the last time I was here, you guys had a fight at the bar. And you told me you were home at that.
No, we
Or
haven't.
he came home from a bar. Someone came home from the bar. Hey, who's that? Jorge. Hey, George.
Yeah, what's up with the blind light? Is she there? She's dead. Can you just repeat that for me? No problem.
Let's go outside.
You didn't think I'd call. Go, sis.
Yeah, bitch. He didn't think you were going to call because he thought he was just taking a nap. I just, someone left a comment the other day saying that her sister, or his sister, I think it was a female, is just like Sarah Boone and went through the fact that, she's been married a few times. She doesn't care for her children, all of the Sarah Boone things. And she said that she found it so surprising that I've never encountered someone like Sarah Boone. And, I've encountered, just to clarify, some terrible people. And I've known them, some of them a little more closely than obviously I would have liked to. But I have never seen embodied in one person, not just such a terrible haircut and such bad hair, but all of these terrible qualities. The lack of self-awareness alone is so rare. And I'm not saying we don't see it occasionally, but it's usually kind of a standalone. Most people can barely get through life with just that. Her lack of self-awareness, her pompous attitude, her cruelty, her inability to read a room, just to me, it is an exceptional situation. And I know not a lot of you, but some of you have mentioned that your mother had a lot of Sarah Boone's qualities, which is heartbreaking and terrifying. But to be exactly like Sarah Boone, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. Anyway, I have a lot of faith in Judge Jackson. I have fantasies of her before she comes to her decision, being stuck in the elevator with Judge Cranick and Sarah Boone coming up in conversation. Unfortunately, I know that a family court judge can't sentence someone to the electric chair, but it would be nice.
Electric chair.
And the worst part about this is that there's really no winning when it comes to her son. And Brian knows that, and he's going to have to watch it. He's going to have to see it unfold. Even, we were talking about it in the live chat, which was so fun, by the way. Thank you all so much for joining me and being patient and wonderful, as always. We were talking about the fact that a lot of times when one parent is, an a-hole, it's really not supposed to say to the kid, listen, your father, your mother, total a-hole. Just doesn't work that way, and it's not how to act in life. We were talking about the fact that you really have to let the child, really with just like everything else, you have to let your child learn for themselves, because anything we don't learn for ourselves, we don't really learn. And the hard way, just like life has to teach us all. Standing by as a parent and allowing that to unfold before you over years is very difficult. I don't know it firsthand, but I have seen it. And also, duh. And Brian has been going through that for a long time now, because this didn't just start the day that she was arrested. This started years before that. He would bring his son over there. He would have to then go pick him up because they wanted to get drunk. Brian. And then the last 5-6 years, very unpleasant, very painful, horrific even. And now, just because this agreement will be reached in whatever capacity, it's not over for Brian. It's never over for them. It's certainly never over for his son, as far as that is his mother. And whatever, listen, these relationships, and at their best, are complicated and often fraught with issues. This, I I can't even, obviously I can't, I can't, I have no point of reference for that. And for being either one of them, their son or Brian, quite frankly, I just, having the other parent be kind of a deadbeat or kind of a dickhead or whatever, that's one thing. But this is, as Kranick would say, this is a different kitty. We will see what happens. I wish that certain measures were taken, because this was very clear to most people, certainly people in law enforcement, what was going on here. And, it's because of all of the years of neglect and misconduct on behalf of law enforcement, everyone suffers. It's just like, because of all the years that physicians were over prescribing and giving out opiates to the point where most of the country was addicted for a while. Now you can't get a painkiller if you have a tooth pulled. Why should the patients have to pay the price for that? Why should the victims have to pay the price? Because the law could not protect them and would not protect them. Thank you for watching. I will see you very soon.